وسلم على نبينا محمد عليه السلام صلاة تدوم وتهدى إليه ممار الليالي وطول الدوام اللهم صل وسلم على نبينا محمد عليه السلام صلاة تدوم وتهدى إليه ممار الليالي وطول الدوام مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم يا أكرم الخلق ما لي من ألوذ به سواك عند حلول الحديث العميم ولن يضيق رسول الله جاهك بإذا الكريم تجلى باسم منتقم فإن من جودك الدنيا وضرتها ومن علومك علم اللوح والقلم يا نفس لا تقنطي من زلة عظمتين الكبائر في الغفران كالأمام مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم لعل رحمة ربي حين يقسمها تأتي على حسب العصيان في القسم يا ربي واجعل رجائي غير منعكس لديك واجعل حسابي غير منخرم والطف بعبدك في الدارين إن له صبرا متى تدعوه الأهوال هازم وذل سحب صلاة منك دائمة على النبي بمنهل ومنسجم ما رنحت عذبات الباري ريح صبا وأطرب العيسى حاد العيس بالنظام مولاي المصطفى بلغ مقاصدنا واغفر لنا ما مضى يا واسع الكرم واغفر إلهي لكل المسلمين بما يتلون في المسجد الأقصى وفي الحرم بجاه من بيته في طيبة حرام واسمه قاسم من أعظم القاسم مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم وهذه بردة المختار قد ختمت والحمد لله في بدء وفي ختم أبياتها قد أتت 60 مع 100 فرج بها كربنا يا واسع الكرم فاغفر لناشدها واغفر لقائلها سألتك الخير يا ذا الجود والكرم يا ربي بالمصطفى بلغ مقاصدنا واغفر لنا ما مضى يا واسع الكرم مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم اللهم صل وسلم وبارك عليه وعلى آله اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد وسلم اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد وسلم اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد وسلم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. It is narrated that whenever the Salihin, pious people, are mentioned, Allah's mercy descends upon those places. It is with this intention we hold the Khatam Sharif in honor of Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal that we may receive from Allah's mercy oceans, that we may learn and benefit from his life of his pious friends. Around October 2018, we had the opportunity to visit Iraq and visit some of the holy personalities that are buried there. Some of the likes are Imam Ali, Imam Hussein, Imam Abu Hanifa, and of course Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jilani as well. So on one of the days we had a chance to visit the ziyarat of Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, and prior to going we went to a few different ziyarats in the coach, and then we set off on our journey towards Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, and it was quite a bit of a drive away in the coach, and they gave out these nice water drinks in the carton as well. And when we got to the actual ziyarat, it was around Asr time. So we went inside a little room and we prayed, and this room was divided by a curtain, like a flowery curtain with purple, pink and black designs. So we prayed Asr, and then the Khadim came, and then he took us outside of the room into the same room but a side entrance, And over there, we were surprised that this is the ziyarat of, Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal. So we stayed there, we sat down. The room was quite small, so only about 20 of us could fit inside. So we sat inside and obviously we read Surah Yasin Sharif, we read a few qasaid, and then once we were inside, then we came out, and then the ladies came and then they went inside as well into the same room. And obviously during the coach ride, we were thinking that it's Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, one of the prominent figures in Islamic history, that have a huge ziyarat and shrine and minaret and mosque, dome, whole complex, but it was literally just a small room inside a normal street, and there was a sign outside saying Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal ziyarat. So we were quite taken back by this, and it was in a remote part of the town or remote part of the city. And once, obviously, we paid our respects, we went outside, and even on the way back, we were just thinking that, was this actually Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal ziyarat? Like, I was scratching my head thinking, is this the same Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal that you hear stories about, and the muhaddiseen and the teachers of like Imam Bukhari, Imam Muslim, and prominent figures like that? And then as we learned during the build-up to this Khatam Sharif, that millions attended the janazah, but yet their roza, their shrine was very small, almost like, inside someone's house, inside someone's garden. So, this was really surprising, even now to this day. So our teacher explained that this was because, as he was in life, he is after death humble. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala ali Muhammad wa sallim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala ali Muhammad wa sallim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala ali Muhammad wa sallim.
Of course, we cannot do his life justice in these few moments, but we will try to shed some light on this great personality. Imam Ahmad was nurtured and raised by his mother, as his father passed away at a young age. Both mother and son grew up in poverty, but neither of them sought the help of anyone. They were very dignified and lived their life in a very principled manner. For example, Imam Ahmad's mother would tell him to focus on his studies and not worry about earning a living. But he did not want her to bear this responsibility. So he would take on low-paid labor jobs like collecting firewood, copying books, to earn a small wage. Even when his own uncle offered him financial help, he refused. That is because Imam Ahmad was extremely upright, pious, and always watchful of his every move. He was very critical of himself and would not let the praise of others delude him. He would not allow anyone to kiss his hand or take water from the well for his wudu. He was always on guard his entire life against his ego and the devil. He denied himself the luxuries and comfort of this world. Even when the Khalifa would offer him large sums of money, he would refuse. Why? Because he was so steadfast upon the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and he didn't want dunya to pollute him. This is what he taught his family and his students. Even in his final moments, when he was in and out of consciousness, his son heard him say, "Not yet, not yet." When asked why he was saying this, Imam Ahmad replied, "The devil was standing right there, and he's saying, 'Oh Ahmad, you got away from me. I've tried every trick in the book. I've tried to tempt you with money, power, and fame, but you didn't take it.'" So Imam Ahmad said to the devil, "This is just one of your many tricks. I've not escaped you yet. Whilst I'm still breathing, you can still ruin me." Now, this is how he lived his life, in a state of complete humility and always watchful of his every move. Now I'd like to finish off by mentioning a dream of Al-Muwafaq, a contemporary of Imam Ahmad. He said in his dream, "I dreamt I entered paradise and I saw 3 men. The first was sitting at a table and God had assigned one angel to serve him food and another to pour him drink. The second was stood in the middle of paradise, gazing at the throne and looking at his Lord. Now the third was standing at the gate of paradise and was looking into the faces of people and letting them inside. I went to Sayyidina Ridwan, the angel in charge of heaven, and asked who these people were. He said, the first is Bishop Hafi, who came here hungry and thirsty because he denied himself the pleasures of the world. The one in the middle is Ma'ruf al-Kharki, who worshipped God because he desired to see him and now he can. And the third at the gate is Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal. Now God has commanded him to look into the faces of the Sunnis and take them by hand and bring them into Jannah. We ask Allah to make us amongst those fortunate people. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad wa sallim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad wa sallim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad wa sallim. مدد 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 يا سيدي مدد مدد يا رسول الله مدد 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 يا سيدي مدد مدد يا رسول الله مدد يا صديق مدد يا فارسي مدد يا قاسم مدد يا صديق مدد يا بسطامي مدد يا خرقاني مدد 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 يا سيدي مدد مدد يا رسول الله مدد يا فرمدي مدد يا همداني مدد يا خضر مدد يا مجدواني مدد يا عارف مدد يا فضلاوي مدد 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 يا سيدي مدد مدد يا رسول الله مدد يا رابطني مدد يا سماسي مدد يا أمير الكلام مدد يا شاه نقشبند مدد يا عطار مدد يا شرقي مدد 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 يا سيدي مدد مدد يا رسول الله مدد يا أحرار مدد يا بخاري مدد يا درويش مدد يا إمكانجيل مدد يا بقي بالله مدد يا
مدد مدد يا سيدي مدد مدد يا رسول الله مدد 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 يا سيدي مدد مدد يا رسول الله اللهم صل وسلم وبارك عليه وعلى آله اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد وسلم اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد وسلم اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد وسلم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم Imam Ahmad ibn Muhammad ibn Hanbal radiallahu anhu was born in the 164th year of the Hijrah. And he belonged to the Shaybani tribe, which actually traces back to one of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's ancestors. Imam Ahmad's parents actually relocated to Baghdad before Imam Ahmad was born. And he became an orphan at a young age because of his father Muhammad. He passed away. And after this, his mother, Sayyidah Safiya, and his grandfather, Hanbal, raised him. And then, when his grandfather passed away, Sayyidah Safiya raised him alone. Imam Ahmad, he grew up in poverty, and the only real income that they had was a bit of rent that they would receive from a shop that Imam Ahmad's father left behind. Now, as he was growing up, his mother did not want him going into trade or anything else, even though Baghdad at that time was like a great civilization. Instead, she wanted her son to be engaged in sacred knowledge. And so through her guidance and her encouragement, Imam Ahmad, he memorized the Quran at a young age, and then he became engaged in seeking sacred knowledge. And she did not want her son, as we heard, she did not want her son to worry about providing for the family. So she would spin cotton and earn a little bit of livelihood. But Imam Ahmad, he was a man of principle and integrity. And so he did not want to leave this financial responsibility on his mother alone. So he would take these small, low-paid labor jobs just so that he could provide something. Now throughout this entire time, both mother and son remained dignified. And even though people tried to offer them help, they wouldn't accept any handouts. And as we heard, even Imam Ahmad's own uncle, he tried many times to offer help, but they wouldn't accept it. Now Imam Ahmad, he mentioned himself, he says that these principles that he lived his life with, and this passion that he had for studying the religion, and his beautiful manners, and the patience that he had despite the many hardships that he had in life, all of these qualities he attributes, he says that these were instilled by his mother. May Allah bless her soul. Now most of us will be aware that Imam Ahmad, he was the fourth of the four Imams of fiqh. But what many of us don't actually know is that these four Imams are actually linked. And if you read the article for this Khatam sheet, you'll be able to see these links. Imam Ahmad's passion was in the science of hadith. And the very first hadith, in fact, that he wrote at the age of 16 was from Qadi Abu Yusuf, who we know is one of the main students of Imam Abu Hanifa, direct students. Now Imam Ahmad, he studied with many teachers, and all of them loved and they admired him and they adored him because he had beautiful manners. Now after he had studied with a lot of the great scholars in Baghdad, he wanted to travel, but firstly he didn't have the means to travel, and more importantly, his mother would be left on her own. But Imam Ahmad's mother, she encouraged him to go and seek the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Imam Ahmad, he traveled to many places like Kufa, to Basra, to Makkah Sharif, to Yemen, all in search of scholars of hadith. And like I mentioned, all of his teachers loved and spoke very highly of his memory, his dedication, and his piety. Now, some of his teachers even came to know of his poor situation and tried to help him out, but he wouldn't accept help from anyone. So, for example, when Imam Ahmad was studying in Makkah Sharif, he didn't turn up to the lesson of one of his teachers, Imam Sufyan. And when Imam Sufyan saw that he wasn't present, he sent some of the students that go check up on him. And when they went to his small rented room, they saw that he was dressed in rags. And so they asked him, said, what's going on? Why didn't you come to the lesson? Why are you in this state? And he said that I have nothing to wear. I had one pair of clothes which I washed and put out to dry, and somebody has stolen them. So the student said, okay, we'll provide you some money, buy some clothes, but he wouldn't accept the offer. And then they pleaded, and eventually he only agreed with a fellow student. When he made an agreement with him, he said that I will write out a book for you. This was because he was an excellent calligrapher, in exchange for a little bit of money that he would go and buy some clothes. This is the level of piety that he practiced and the firm principles that he stood by. Imam Ahmad, he continued studying until the age of 40, and after his mother passed away, he married Sayyidah Abbasa, and she was a very pious lady. And Imam Ahmad actually in fact said about her that we lived together for 27 years, but we never had an argument. And I don't think many of us can say the same for our partners. Anyway, Imam Ahmad, he was now an accomplished hadith master, and his classes would attract thousands of students. But things were going to change very quickly. Imam Ahmad, he was living during the Abbasid Khilafat, and the Khalifa at that time was Harun al-Rashid. Now, during Harun al-Rashid's time, a deviant group started to emerge. They started to attract attention, and they were the Mu'tazila. Now, because Harun al-Rashid was upon Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, he had suppressed the Mu'tazila scholars, and many of them were locked away, and some of them even managed to run away and go into hiding because he's very harsh with them. But after Harun passed away, Harun al-Rashid passed away, his son Ma'mun, when he came in charge, he became influenced by the Mu'tazila, and they made him believe that the Sunnis were in fact the deviant people. So what did Ma'mun do? He sent instructions to the governor of Baghdad that the scholars of Baghdad are to profess the Mu'tazila beliefs, or they'll be punished. They'll lose their positions and they'll be punished in prison. And unfortunately, many of the scholars, they buckled under this pressure and they professed this deviant belief. Imam Ahmad, who now had been teaching for around about 14 years in Baghdad, he was now being summoned along with 3 others by the governor, just so the governor could hear them agree to the Mu'tazila beliefs. But Imam Ahmad and one of his young student, Muhammad ibn Nuh, they were the only ones who didn't actually give in. And because of this, Imam Ahmad, he was imprisoned, and he was going to be sent to Khalifa Ma'mun. And Khalifa Ma'mun, he even promised, he said, if I see Ahmad when he's brought to me, I'm going to behead him. So Imam Ahmad was taken with Muhammad ibn Nuh to go to the Khalifa. But on the way, they received the news that Ma'mun passed away, he died. So the soldiers, they took Imam Ahmad back to Baghdad prison, and he was kept there until the next Khalifa, he became in charge, and a short while after, then the case was brought to him. Now he too, the next Khalifa, he too was influenced by the Mu'tazila. And so what he did was he had Imam Ahmad debate with many of the Mu'tazila scholars in his presence, and Imam Ahmad defeated all of them. And so what did he do in the end? He had Imam Ahmad tied up and lashed very severely, and even trampled upon until he became unconscious. And bear in mind, this time Imam Ahmad is in his 50s. Then after this, Imam Ahmad, he was placed under house arrest, and he was stopped from teaching, from going to the mosque, even people visiting him. And this whole Inquisition period lasted nearly 15 years. Then eventually, the Khalifa al-Mutawakkil, he became in charge, and because he was upon Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, he put an end to all of this, and he freed and he honored Imam Ahmad. And he, in fact, he tried many times to give gifts and money to Imam Ahmad, but he would not accept anything, sticking to the same principles that he held since he was young. And Imam Ahmad's humility was such that he didn't want any recognition or fame. Or as we heard from Yasin, he was very critical of himself. He didn't allow his ego to overpower him. And one of the reasons that Imam Ahmad was so steadfast upon the truth was because of a dream that Imam Shafi had. Now Imam Shafi, he was in Egypt when he had this dream. And so he wrote a letter to Imam Ahmad and he sent a messenger to Baghdad. When Imam Ahmad read this letter, he started to cry. And he said, I hope that Allah Almighty fulfills what Shafi has said. And the messenger, he said, what was written in this letter? And Imam Ahmad replied that Imam Shafi said that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam came to him in a dream and said, O Ibn Idris, give glad tidings to this young man, Abu Abdullah Ahmad. He will soon be tested in the religion of Allah, and he will be called to say that the Quran is created. So let him not say that. He will indeed be beaten with a whip, but Allah will surely spread for him knowledge that will remain until the day of judgment. This was the prophecy regarding Imam Ahmad's trials. And as we can see from his life, that he had this prophetic characteristic, which was that he always stood by his principles. No matter the situation, he was never willing to compromise them. And because of this, Allah gave him such honor in this world that over 1 million people attended his janazah. And what did he leave behind? What was his legacy? He did not leave behind dinar or dirham or any wealth, but his legacy was in the books, and in particular the students that he left behind. Scholars like Imam Bukhari, Imam Muslim, Imam Abu Dawood were his direct students. And he compiled one of the biggest collections of hadith, which equals around 28,000 narrations. This is what he left behind. Until today, and no doubt till the end of days, people will continue to benefit from his works and teachings. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us, to protect us, and allow us to be with Imam Ahmad in the hereafter.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألم نشرح لك صدرك ووضعنا بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم يا قاضي الحاجات يا يا قاضي الحاجات يا قاضي الحاجات. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم يا كافي المهمات يا كافي المهمات بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم يا رافع الدرجات يا رافع الدرجات. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم يا حل المشكلات يا حل المشكلات بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم يا دافع البليات يا دافع البليات. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم يا شافي الأمراض يا شافي الأمراض يا شافي. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم يا مسبب الأسباب يا مسبب الأسباب يا مسبب. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم يا مجيب الدعوات يا مجيب الدعوات يا مجيب. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم يا أرحم الراحمين يا أرحم الراحمين يا برحمتك يا رب. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل حسبنا. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله لا حول ولا قوة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله. بسم الله بسم الله. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد. بسم الله الذي لا يضر مع اسمه شيء في الارض ولا في السماء وهو السميع العليم. شرف النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. Fatiha. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله. الله أكبر الله أكبر ولله الحمد. Fatiha.